arms around Republicans rather than doing the right thing on behalf of the heroes.
Anthony Weiner was an up-and-coming politician in New York's Democratic Party.
He was known as a policy wonk, someone who knew the issues, someone who was committed to his cause.
But his uncontrolled compulsions and sexual exploits made national headlines.
When a congressman starts texting close-ups of his privates and his name is Anthony Weiner, that story could only have gone one way.
Weiner scrambled to contain the damage.
I'm here today to again apologize for the personal mistakes I have made and the embarrassment I have caused.
But his scandalous electronic messages
She was in fact only 15 years old.
would destroy his career.
So today I'm announcing my resignation from Congress.
Obliterate his marriage, and rock a presidential election.
What they could see from the metadata on this fella Anthony Weiner's laptop, there were thousands of Secretary Clinton's emails on that device.
Anthony Weiner's bright future as a politician had a dark side, which overshadowed the budding political star and made him notorious. The trail of politicians involved in sex scandals is a bipartisan road of shame. Many politicians are able to overcome their woes by performing age-old rituals of apology and contrition. But some never learn, unable to suppress their uncontrollable desires. They are the ones who become notorious. In November of 2016, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was the odds-on favorite to trounce Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump and win the White House.
The latest national poll has Clinton up by 9, just 12 days from Election Day. We've got the national poll that shows her up by 9, another one shows her up by 14, another one shows her up by 3.
The only thing that seemed to be standing in the way of a Clinton landslide were congressional investigations into her usage of a private email server at her home to conduct government business.
As Secretary of State, Clinton had sent official communications, including classified messages, from her private server at home. Through FBI investigation, they determined that the server was unsecure and that some of these messages had in fact been removed. This led people to wonder whether Clinton had something to hide.
But while Clinton email investigations dominated national headlines, the FBI was looking into another matter. They were investigating the questionable sexting habits of Anthony Weiner, who just happened to be the husband of Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin.
Weiner, a former congressman and two-time New York City mayoral candidate, was accused of sexting with a 15-year-old girl. Originally, Clinton's email scandal had nothing to do with the accusations against Weiner. But soon detectives made a discovery that propelled the Clinton email scandal and made Weiner the headline news for all the wrong reasons.
As part of their investigation, the FBI seized a laptop belonging to Anthony Weiner. But when investigators searched the computer for sexual messages, they found more Clinton emails. FBI Director James Comey revealed the new discovery in a letter to congressional leaders. And just 2 weeks before election night, the headlines were again about Hillary Clinton's emails.
So the American people deserve to get the full and complete facts immediately. The director himself has said he doesn't know whether the emails referenced in his letter are significant or not. I'm confident, whatever they are, will not change the conclusion reached in July.
The scandal couldn't have come at a worse time for Clinton's presidential bid. That Weiner's uncontrollable sexting had caused the whole mess was a fatal blow to his once promising political career. A career that had its origins in rough boroughs of New York, where a young Anthony Weiner learned the brash, tough-talking style that would help him thrive on the political stage. Anthony Weiner was born in New York City on September 4th, 1964. Anthony's mother, Frances, was a public high school math teacher, his father, Mort, a lawyer. As a youngster, Weiner inherited his father's gift for arguing, and after graduating from Brooklyn Technical High School in 1981, he attended the University of New York at Plattsburgh. It was during his college years that Weiner developed an interest in politics and became active in student government, where he was named the most effective student senator. After graduating with a degree in political science in 1985, Weiner made the move that would change his life. He signed up for an internship in the Capitol Hill office of New York Congressman Chuck Schumer.
Congressman Schumer hired him and brought Weiner to Washington, D.C. during the final semester of his senior year. That internship led to a full-time gig, and almost immediately, Weiner began plotting a run for office.
By 1991, after only 5 years in the political arena, Anthony Weiner felt ready for office.
Anthony had a personality that was very good for politics, especially New York politics. He was very bright, he was articulate, he spoke well, he has a strong, aggressive personality which can't work in many places in the country, but it works very well in New York.
Weiner pursued a newly created seat in New York City Council. He squeezed out a victory in the Democratic primary, prevailing by less than 400 votes. At just 27, he was the youngest candidate ever elected to the council.
Over the next several years, Weiner built a reputation as a man of action.
Weiner initiated programs to address quality of life concerns. He also started a program to put at-risk and troubled teens to work cleaning up graffiti and backed development plans that helped revive the historic Sheepshead Bay area.
He was known as a policy wonk, someone who knew the issues, someone who was committed to his cause, and someone who was very strident and passionate in his stand on issues.
By 1996, Weiner's profile was on the rise. Cosmopolitan magazine named him one of America's top 101 bachelors and suggested he might even become president one day. By 1998, Weiner felt ready for a bigger political role. His mentor, Chuck Schumer, was making a run for the Senate, vacating his seat in the House.
There's a lot on the line for him because this is really the beginning of his political career on what would ultimately be the national stage.
Weiner secured Schumer's endorsement in what would prove a tight race.
Weiner won the election. Years of hard work and surrounding himself with the right people made him one of New York's most influential figures and one of the country's most promising politicians.
In 2001, during a Democratic National Committee retreat on Martha's Vineyard, Anthony Weiner met his future wife, Hillary Clinton's Deputy Chief of Staff, Huma Abedin.
Abedin was incredibly powerful in her own right. For all intents and purposes, the Clintons were her surrogate parents, and she had a bigger Rolodex than Weiner did.
Weiner's admiration for Abedin went beyond a physical attraction. He was intrigued by her intelligence and grace in politics.
The feeling was mutual. Abedin was impressed with Weiner's quick wit and passion for issues.
Well, I think Huma was attracted to him because of who he was, basically. And she always said that I always believed in Anthony, meaning she believed him when he said he had interest in helping the middle class and helping people and really wanting to do good.
But it wasn't until 7 years later in 2008 that they started seriously dating, during then Senator Hillary Clinton's first presidential campaign. By then, Huma had risen to become one of Hillary Clinton's closest aides and her traveling chief of staff.
If you're looking for a power couple in Washington, D.C. or New York, it was certainly Anthony Weiner and his wife, Huma Abedin.
In 2009, Weiner and Abedin got engaged, and the following July they got married on Long Island, New York. President Bill Clinton officiated the ceremony. But there was no time for any extended honeymoon. Anthony Weiner was a man in a hurry to go places. Soon after the wedding, the New York politician made headlines for an impassioned speech about health care for 9/11 emergency responders.
It's Republicans wrapping their arms around Republicans rather than doing the right thing on behalf of the heroes. It is a shame! A shame! If you believe this is a bad idea to provide health care, then vote no!
The speech thrust Weiner into the national spotlight. He began to be considered such a rising star that New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg feared Weiner could beat him in a head-to-head race for his job. Bloomberg and his staff began holding a weekly conference call to discuss how to dissuade Weiner from running for mayor. The billionaire's team decided to play hardball. Bloomberg's team knew Weiner regularly played hockey at a local ice rink. So in May of 2009, they secretly hired a photographer to take a pic of Weiner at the rink. The resulting photograph was planted in the New York Post and the Daily News, with a headline that suggests Weiner was goofing off instead of doing his job on city council. The newspaper articles were a minor speed bump. But on May 27, 2011, Weiner found himself in hot water for the first time when sexually explicit photos he sent to a woman he was communicating with on Twitter became public. The media began hounding him for an explanation, and his name gave the story an extra comedic edge.
There are all kinds of tongue-in-cheek headlines in the days to come, with the New York Post leading the way with the front page caption saying Weiner roast, and saying that he was getting a grilling. To a lot of people, he had simply become a laughingstock.
Weiner denied sending the picture, but if he hadn't, who had?
He told various talk shows on CNN and Fox News, and also reporters that followed him on the street, that the photo was put up there by a hacker. Weiner called it a prank and a distraction.
3 days after the photo was tweeted, Weiner's spokesman told reporters the congressman would be getting lawyers involved to deal with the hacker, and Weiner was still receiving some support.
New Yorkers admired Weiner, and they didn't want to believe that he was involved in any kind of scandal, especially a sexual scandal.
He had no record of lying or inappropriate behavior in the past that was known to the public.
The press dubbed the incident Weinergate. But what seemed like a funny story at the time was actually the opening act in a 3-part drama that would make Anthony Weiner notorious. In May 2011, New York Congressman Anthony Weiner was trying to talk his way out of a sexting scandal after an indecent photo from his Twitter account was posted. Weiner's public gaffe was the first in a string of embarrassing sex scandals that would eventually make him notorious. Ironically, the future sexting scandals would boost Weiner's celebrity status and lead to some very unlikely offers from TV and the movies. In 2014, Weiner made a cameo in the Amazon web series Alpha House. In 2015, he landed a role as an air traffic controller in the sci-fi movie Sharknado 3. The former congressman was also the subject of the documentary film Weiner that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2016. But back in the early summer of 2011, his political future, which once seemed assured, was threatened by a humiliating scandal the press dubbed Weinergate.
It was a big story. He was married to one of Hillary Clinton's top aides, Huma Abedin. His enemies absolutely made the most of it.
When a congressman starts texting close-ups of his privates in underwear and his name is Anthony Weiner, it's almost as though some kind of vibration on the planet happened, and that story could only have gone one way.
Cameras and microphones surrounded Weiner at all times.
Now you know not to come down this block.
Weiner dismissed the image to the scandal-hungry press as somebody's prank, the work of a hacker.
I was hacked. It happens to people. You move on.
But it was too good for the media to let go.
Did you send that picture to that college student in Washington State?
I did not. She says she never got it and doesn't know me. I certainly don't know her.
By June 1st, a week after the story broke, Weiner was still insisting to CNN that he had not posted the photo. However, he would not say whether or not he was in fact in the photograph.
This seems like it was a prank to make fun of my name. You know, when you're named Weiner, that happens a lot. Got 45,000 some odd Twitter followers, hundreds of people that I follow. This seems like a prank that has gotten an enormous amount of attention.
You would know if this is your underpants.
Photographs can be manipulated. Photographs can be taken out from one place and put in another place. Photos can be doctored. And I want to make sure that we know for sure what happened here. It certainly doesn't look familiar to me, but I don't want to say with certitude to you something that I don't know to be the certain truth.
Once you start to equivocate, once you start to mix up your stories, at that point, you've just made the problem that much worse. And Anthony Weiner very much made his own problems 1,000 times worse.
While a mea culpa may have satisfied the press, Weiner's unconvincing denials kept the media spotlight on the story.
I sat down and did interviews with anyone that wanted, answered questions extensively. Made it very clear I did not send the picture, that my Twitter account had been hacked, and this prank apparently has been successful. But after hours, almost 11 hours of answering questions, any that anyone wanted to put, today I'm going to have to get back to work doing the job that I'm paid to do.
Is there a way the congressman could call the Capitol Police or the FBI, you understand the technology, and have someone come in and say, this was not sent from his BlackBerry, this was not sent from his official computer, we have looked at all the computers that he has access to, this is not from him?
I think Weiner just wants to get this thing over with, to sort of basically ignore questions today, as he clearly was ignoring Dana's questions, and wait it out.
Weiner's problems got worse when only 2 weeks after the first image was released, he had his second sexting scandal.
Breitbart posted a cropped, shirtless photo of Weiner that he had sent to a woman. And this woman also claimed that Weiner had sent her a sexually graphic image.
A tearful Weiner made a profuse public apology at a news conference where he admitted to sending photos of his underwear-clad crotch to a young woman on Twitter and lying repeatedly to protect himself.
I'm here primarily to express my apologies to my wife and family, but anyone who was misled, all of you who were misled, the people who I lied to, I have an apology for all of them.
He also admitted that he engaged in inappropriate contact with 6 women over the course of 3 years on social networking sites. Weiner insisted that he had never met or had physical relationships with any of the women involved.
As more of the photos came out, what was likely happening to Huma is that she was consistently being bombarded by how much of a double life her husband was living, and that can cause incredible heartbreak.
But while Huma stood by Weiner, as things snowballed, some in the Democratic Party were distancing themselves from the congressman. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi called for an ethics investigation. Some prominent Democrats thought he should resign, but Weiner held firm, refusing to step aside.
I am deeply regretting what I have done, and I am not resigning.
In the middle of his sexting scandals, Weiner received happy news when he learned Huma was pregnant with the couple's first child. But shortly thereafter, a third picture was released, and calls for the congressman to resign became much louder.
Weiner was frantic. He didn't want to resign. Behind the scenes, he was dialing up his Democratic allies, pleading for their support and begging for forgiveness. But in the end, they couldn't support him. They couldn't take the risk.
Should he resign? My answer is yes.
I came to the conclusion that with the love of his family, the confidence of his constituents, and the need for help, that Congressman Weiner should resign from the Congress.
Instead of stepping down, Weiner tried to simply step out of the spotlight.
Weiner took a temporary leave of absence from the House to seek unspecified treatment for his behavior.
It wasn't enough. Even President Obama got involved and sent a thinly veiled message to Weiner.
I can tell you that if it was me, I would resign.
On June 15th, Huma Abedin returned from a trip to North Africa with Hillary Clinton. The day brought an astounding third revelation. 28-year-old former porn star Ginger Lee told the media she had received sexual messages from Weiner after he noticed she was following him on Twitter.
Lee held a press conference in New York with a prominent LA lawyer, Gloria Allred, who claimed that she did not respond to Weiner's suggestive text messages and claimed that Weiner told her that if they both kept quiet, that it would all die down.
Once it got to the point that he lied on national television, I knew that anything I said after that would either have to be a lie or an admission. It might have never turned into this if he'd told the truth, but he kept lying.
The next day, Weiner held another press conference, noticeably without his wife by his side.
I'm here today to again apologize for the personal mistakes I have made and the embarrassment I have caused.
After a brief apology, Weiner finally delivered the red meat that members of the public had been calling for.
Today I'm announcing my resignation from Congress.
This was an important resignation. This guy was not just a really minor little character. He had a potentially really powerful political future. He had been involved in a number of important causes and legislation. I think he was a smart guy, though you could hardly guess that from his a lot of his behavior.
Noticeably absent from the press conference was Huma Abedin, which caused some members of the media to speculate that Weiner's marriage was in trouble. But for the time being, Huma was still sticking with Weiner. On June 20th, 2011, less than a month after the first photo appeared, Weiner formally submitted a letter of resignation effective at midnight.
Anthony Weiner retreats and goes into rebuilding mode, which would be the advice that I would give to any elected official, because America is a forgiving country. And the American people not only love comebacks, but they're willing to give a second chance. So Anthony Weiner really was set up perfectly to just go away for a little while, recover, and let time and circumstance pass. And he would have been perfectly set up for that comeback that many people were willing to give him.
While laying low, Weiner decided to ramp up his business dealings, keeping a low profile. He formed a consulting company and leveraged his contacts for income.
He advised over a dozen companies, including electronic medical records providers, and biofuel firms.
But his cozy relationship with big business seemed to be at odds with his political record.
Not only was he someone who very much railed against special interests and lobbyists and corporate interests, now all of a sudden here was Anthony Weiner serving a side that he had once condemned.
His earnings soared.
His household's income grew to $496,000 through his new work.
In 2011, Weiner sold his modest two-bedroom apartment in Forest Hills, Queens, and began renting a spacious apartment on Park Avenue in Manhattan, valued at over $3 million. That December, his wife Huma gave birth to their first child, Jordan Zane Weiner. The New York Post was first to publish pictures of the baby, but other publications soon followed suit. The glossy, posed pictures left many to wonder whether Weiner was plotting a political comeback.
Weiner detailed his remorse and said he had no immediate plans to run for public office. Abedin confirmed this and supported his testimony that he was a devoted family man. If he could rebuild his life with his wife and son, he could certainly earn the public's forgiveness.
Would voters give him a second chance? The DNC spent $100,000 on polling and research to find out.
Although the polling showed that people were willing to forgive, it was conditional. They wanted to know what Weiner had learned from the experience, what he had been up to since, and also how he'd moved on.
Huma Abedin, wanting to be a good wife, stuck by Anthony Weiner and even helped him with his comeback plans.
Morning, how are you today?
Less than a year after resigning from Congress, Anthony Weiner ended the rumors and made an announcement. He wanted to be mayor of New York City. Would voters give him a second chance, or would Weiner's notorious secret life return to haunt him? In 2011, New York Congressman Anthony Weiner's career was rocked by a series of humiliating sexting scandals that drove him from office.
So today I'm announcing my resignation from Congress.
By 2013, Weiner reached a fork in the road, a choice between the path to redemption and the path to utter disgrace. His own worst enemy, Weiner would choose the road that would make him notorious. Anthony Weiner launched a political comeback bid by announcing he would seek the Democratic Party's nomination for mayor of New York City.
If an individual has the will, and if an individual is persistent and is a good speaker, it's actually surprisingly easy to make a comeback in today's world.
He had sought the Democratic nomination for mayor back in 2005, and at the time he was vying against 3 other opponents. And he actually came in second after starting last. So he thought he could win back those supporters.
He insisted he had changed. His sexting days were in the past.
And I know I let a lot of people down, but I've also learned some tough lessons.
Weiner's idea was, okay, I got caught doing something, but then I apologized for it. We're all human. We all deserve a second chance. We all make mistakes.
All I can do is go out every single day, if there's 1 pad or 50 cameras, trying to talk about issues that I think are important. And I am waging this campaign on a bet. And the bet is, at the end of the day, citizens care more about their own future than about my past with my wife.
Weiner's wife, Huma Abedin, appeared in his campaign video that launched his candidacy. And it appeared that she was in full support of his run for mayor.
In 2013, Weiner was aiming to replace billionaire Michael Bloomberg, who had served 3 terms as mayor.
I frankly have been encouraged by how many people say they're prepared to give me a second chance and just listen to my ideas. And look, there may be people who say they're not, and who they say they'll never vote for me, and I get that, and I respect that, and people have a right to have that view. But even for those people, I want them to hear about what I have to say.
Why do you think you deserve the second chance?
Look, it's up in the final analysis, it's up to the voters to make that determination.
He has to show this new rehabilitated version of himself that is capable of not only running a campaign for ostensibly the capital of the world, but also for the media attention that is going to come again regarding his past.
His campaign got off to an encouraging start. It seemed donors were able to forgive his past transgressions.
He's able to tap his old connections. He's able to point to his success and popularity and opportunity from before. So a lot of big donors were giving Anthony Weiner money based on his potential and the promise that he had once shown.
Frankly, I think most New Yorkers, particularly those in the middle class and communities like this, they want to talk about the solutions to the challenges that New York City faces. That's what they care about. And I want to try to provide some answers. I want to provide some solutions and have a conversation, debate with them.
Weiner was employing a classic communications process, which is repent, ask for forgiveness, show a way forward, and focus on the future. Voters find that very appealing.
By the end of June, some polls showed Weiner leading in the Democratic primary. His main opponents were City Council Speaker Christine Quinn and veteran politician Bill de Blasio. Weiner even felt comfortable enough to grant access to a documentary film crew.
Filmmakers and shadow him and have almost complete access to them during that mayoral campaign. And that's, I don't think, ever a good idea.
In 2013, after filming had begun, a 22-year-old woman named Sydney Leathers came forward, claiming to have had a sexting relationship with Weiner since 2012, this time under the alias of Carlos Danger.
The only thing funnier after the whole Anthony Weiner scandal was that we then find this next batch of things where he's calling himself Carlos Danger, which is just so, I know this has become a cliche to say, but you could not make this stuff up.
Leathers said she was deeply passionate about politics and found the glib, fiery Weiner fascinating. She reached out to him via Facebook and was surprised when the former congressman replied back several months later. The two first exchanged text messages about politics, but Weiner quickly steered the conversation towards sex.
So there's a real risk involved, especially when you're a public figure in sexting. What they're getting out of it is a high from the actual sexting and the reaction of someone, and then once they receive something back, it's also a high. So again, it's actually getting high outside of their regular life.
Anthony Weiner had never stopped the inappropriate behavior that led to his initial downfall, but he was continuing to do the exact same thing in the middle of a campaign that he had promised not only that he had changed, but that he was going to create change for the people of New York City, positive change. And it turns out that Anthony Weiner had never changed at all.
You talk to God and work out your problems, but stay out of the public eye.
Well,
That's
I'm
the
not going
difference.
to stay with. That's up to you to judge, my friend.
Yes.
I don't take my judgment from you, and I don't judge you.
You're a bad example
That's
for the
your
people.
judgment?
Weiner acknowledged that he had sent messages to at least 3 women in 2012. One recipient claimed that Weiner described himself to her as a perpetually horny middle-aged man.
Weiner attempted to minimize the damage.
I'm not denying it. I denied it at first, and that was a mistake. I learned my lesson. That my wife has given me a second chance, that I've gotten these things completely behind me. I'm glad they're behind me. That doesn't mean my life ends. It doesn't mean I stop fighting for New York. It doesn't mean I won't be a great mayor. That's all I can promise. That every single day I'm going to work very hard for the people of the city of New York. And as they watch me be their mayor, they can say, you know what? Sure, I know some embarrassing things about that guy, but I also know he works his tail off for us.
After this new scandal hit, many called for him to drop out of the race. Weiner held a press conference with his wife and announced that he would continue his campaign, although he was sorry and regretted any disruption that his actions had caused.
Despite another scandal, Abedin was sticking with her husband.
It was not an easy choice in any way, but I made the decision that it was worth staying in this marriage.
Abedin dutifully stood by his side, albeit with a miserable expression on her face.
People tend to think, oh, the spouse should leave. Actually, that doesn't bear out in what we actually see in the treating community. 2 out of 3 spouses generally stay, and there's lots of reasons for that. People can stay because there's been a historical connection from the relationship, there are children involved, and I think it's very easy to say a person should leave their spouse who's a sex addict, but actually when 2 people work through the addiction together and there is support, the relationship can get better.
Huma Abedin was trapped. She had to lead a double life. She was responsible for her husband's success and wanted to stand by him. She also had to answer to the Hillary Clinton campaign and to the people that she was close to among Hillary Clinton's advisors. She had to sublimate her feelings of disbelief about her husband's behavior and also her disgust with the situation she found herself in.
Look, I love her. She loves me. We have a son. None of the rest of it really matters that much in the broader scheme of things. I wonder all the time what I did to deserve such an amazing woman.
Despite the scandal, Weiner pressed on. Early in the race, his poll numbers had been high.
Weiner was someone who always had confidence in himself and never doubted that he could make a comeback. He's the kind of guy that if he were a quarterback in the last play of the 4th quarter would throw the Hail Mary into the end zone with confidence that it would be caught. So all along, Weiner thought he could make a comeback.
On September 10th, 2013, Anthony Weiner showed up to vote in the primary with his young son, Jordan.
And my public count is 39, so is it 38-0 so far for me? I can wish. Jordan, say hello to Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Say hi.
Love your shoes.
Thank you very much, guys. Again, sorry to keep you waiting.
When the votes were tallied, fewer than 32,000 New Yorkers had cast their vote for Weiner, less than 5% of the total.
He received only 4.9% of the vote.
Many folks had predicted that he would have a poor showing, but I think the results were even a surprise to a lot of us who expected him to lose by quite a bit.
Anthony Weiner's political career was in tatters, but as he had before, Weiner pivoted back into consulting for a handful of clients, which still paid the bills.
Weiner would become a frequent columnist at the New York Daily News and a contributor to local New York television stations.
Over the next several years, Weiner appeared on several national television shows as a guest, and in July 2015 made his first feature film appearance.
Played the head of the National Aero Weather whatever thing on Sharknado 3. So that ultimately, he had to resign from being congressman. He didn't win the mayorship of New York, but he got a pretty swanky job in Sharknado 3, oh hell no.
While Weiner's career had been all but lost, Huma's was just taking off. Her boss, Hillary Clinton, was considered a favorite in the 2016 presidential election, and as the vice chairperson of her campaign, Huma was poised for a future working in the White House. But just as things were looking bright, the notorious Anthony Weiner would rock the campaign with another bombshell. By 2016, Anthony Weiner's inappropriate sexting with multiple women had cost him his seat in Congress.
So today I'm announcing my resignation from Congress.
And destroyed his hopes for becoming mayor of New York. But he had a young son, and his wife, presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's campaign vice chairperson Huma Abedin, had stuck by him. But after a fourth sexting scandal, the now notorious Anthony Weiner was in the spotlight again. On August 28, 2016, Weiner sexted another shirtless photo to a woman, but this time, his young son was included in the picture.
So when someone is not in recovery or living a life within their value system, what can happen is something called the hijacked brain, where they put their addiction above all else. And this is where we see, the experience where he was sexting while his son was laying next to him in bed. Clearly, the decision-making process in the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision-making and judgment, goes offline.
Scandal number 5 was the last straw for Huma Abedin, who announced in August 2016 that they were separating. After long and painful consideration and work on my marriage, I have made the decision to separate from my husband. Anthony and I remain devoted to doing what's best for our son, who is the light of our life. During this difficult time, I ask for respect for our privacy.
The pressure became too much for Huma Abedin. Both personally, she felt betrayed, she felt embarrassed, humiliated by her husband's actions, but she was also under pressure from Hillary Clinton's campaign advisors, who felt that Huma's connection to Anthony Weiner would damage Hillary's chances of being president someday.
Hillary's advisors' fears were realized when news broke of a 6th scandal, this one the most scandalous of them all.
On September 21st, just 6 weeks before the presidential election, the Daily Mail ran an exclusive story that claimed that Weiner had yet again engaged in an online sexual relationship, this time with a 15-year-old high school student.
Pictures of the 53-year-old politician meant just for this young girl's eyes became national news.
The girl told the newspaper she was interested in politics and wanted to see if Weiner was truly a changed man. In January 2016, she reached out to him. She noticed his Twitter account allowed anyone to send him a private message.
I just sent him a nice message, just, hello, I'm a huge fan.
The two began chatting regularly, but the cyber sessions quickly turned sexual.
It's the same story again, but this time it was with a 15-year-old. She was underage. It's way too much. There's no way that he can overcome something like this.
Sexually out of control, Weiner soon took the conversation in a disturbing direction.
He went too far, not only for his reputation, not only for his career, but the law.
According to the newspaper, their conversations had progressed to video chats, with Weiner dressed only in his boxers, encouraging the girl to strip off her clothes and perform a sex act while repeating his name. The story was revealed when the 15-year-old girl became repulsed by Weiner's rape fantasies and told the story to a tabloid newspaper.
The whole sordid tale was out in the open, including shirtless photos, photos of the girl with her face obscured, screenshots of sexual conversations, and Weiner's comments about what he would like to do to this girl when she was old enough.
Now under acute media attention, Weiner acknowledged a flirtatious relationship without going into the specifics. He gave a statement that said, "I have repeatedly demonstrated terrible judgment about the people I have communicated with online and the things I have sent. I am filled with regret and heartbroken for those I have hurt."
Of all the people caught in scandals, Anthony Weiner's got to be the most self-destructive you can possibly imagine, because he gets caught with this, it destroys his career, and he continues to do it.
In September 2016, the FBI and the NYPD, prompted by the Daily Mail story, launched a criminal investigation. Weiner's electronic devices were seized, including his laptop. With the presidential election just weeks away, investigators found something they weren't expecting: data pertaining to Hillary Clinton's emails and the email scandal.
That opened a Pandora's box within the federal government, certainly within the FBI, and Director James Comey had to make a public statement about it.
The investigative team that had finished the investigation in July, focused on Secretary Clinton's emails, asked to meet with me. So I met with them that morning, late morning, in my conference room, and they laid out for me what they could see from the metadata on this fella Anthony Weiner's laptop. There were thousands of Secretary Clinton's emails on that device.
The Republican presidential nominee pounced on the news.
So Uma is getting classified secrets. She's married to Anthony Weiner, who's a perv. No, he is. And I never thought we'd be saying thank you to Anthony Weiner.
Tuesday, November 8th, 2016 was election night. The Clinton camp was set for an expected victory in New York. But as the results came in from across the U.S., tears replaced cheers. It was Trump's night. Huma Abedin would not be working at the White House. The only question that remained was whether her notorious husband's sexting habits would land him in prison.
I'm here primarily to express my apologies to my wife and family, but anyone who was misled.
Given endless chances to make amends, Anthony Weiner's out-of-control sexual compulsion cost him his seat in Congress, a shot at becoming mayor of New York, and might have cost his party a presidential election. A notorious sexting addict, he also destroyed his marriage.
Anthony Weiner and Huma Abedin could have been the power couple of all time, really. She could have been close to the President of the United States. He could have been mayor of New York City. They had a very interesting marriage that came from different worlds in many ways, but it seemed to work for them. And he threw it all away.
Now Weiner faced a new day of reckoning. He was potentially looking at a 10-year prison sentence for sexting with a 15-year-old girl. The NYPD's Special Victims Unit had played a key role in the investigation.
In the case filing, it was said that the 53-year-old serial sexter had taken part in 3 video chat sessions via Skype, during which the girl made it clear that she was not just a minor, she was in fact only 15 years old. And during the latter 2 Skype sessions on February 18th and 23rd, and in a Snapchat communication on March 9th, he used graphic, obscene language and asked the victim to display her naked body, to touch herself, which she did. And then Weiner also sent a message on the app in which he described what he would do to her if she were 18.
With the damning report, Weiner's arrest seemed imminent.
On January 31st, 2017, the Wall Street Journal reported that federal prosecutors weighed bringing child pornography charges against Weiner over the incident.
With the evidence of his guilt overwhelming, Weiner's attorney negotiated a plea agreement. Weiner would plead guilty to a single charge of transferring obscene material to a minor. Under the terms of the deal, Weiner faced a sentence of 21 to 27 months. On May 19, 2017, Weiner surrendered to the FBI. After being processed, he appeared before a United States district judge and tearfully apologized for his actions.
Weiner pled guilty to a single charge of transferring obscene material to a minor.
The same day, after 7 years, his long-suffering wife Huma called it quits.
Abedin officially filed for a divorce and sought sole custody of their son, Jordan.
In September, Weiner was back at the U.S. federal court for sentencing. In a letter to the judge, he apologized for endangering the well-being of the young girl, but asked for probation. He also said he'd ruined his marriage and brought a lifetime of embarrassing questions to his young son. In her own letter to the judge, Huma Abedin said she had been devastated by Anthony's actions and accepted he needed to face the consequences. But she hoped the judge would weigh the potential effects on their child when deciding the appropriate sentence. Anthony Weiner was sentenced to 21 months in federal custody, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release. He was also fined $10,000 and forced to register as a sex offender.
The lesson here is that no one is above accountability. And Anthony Weiner was held accountable, he was given that second chance, and he blew it.
On November 6, 2017, Anthony Weiner reported to federal prison in Massachusetts.
Unable to text, Weiner left an auto-response on his personal email account, asking people to write to him as he would be away for a while. He had so many opportunities to start over again, to learn from his mistakes. But ultimately, in the end, his urge to be this other person, Carlos Danger as he referred to himself, was just far too great. And ultimately, it cost him everything.
In January 2018, the Weiners withdrew their divorce case from court, wanting to settle it privately and avoid further embarrassment for their 6-year-old son.
The fact that all of that talent could have gone towards something good, not only was wasted, but went towards something wrong, makes it all the more tragic.
Anthony Weiner is going to be remembered for a long time. Again, I know this is unfair and it's tasteless, but his name labels his crime.
But is this really the end of Anthony Weiner's political ambitions? Or has his prison sentence given him new hopes for a better tomorrow?
I believe that Anthony Weiner ultimately believes so much in his own abilities that he thinks he could come back from this. He's probably reading up on how Mayor Marion Barry came back in Washington, D.C. after doing time in prison for smoking crack.
Anthony Weiner's scandals cost him his reputation, his political career, and his marriage, and may have cost Hillary Clinton the White House. His name is now forever synonymous with sexting and betrayal, and for those reasons he will always be notorious.